made from the plays. In fact, if you look in the newspaper on Monday or Tuesday of any week in the USA Today, it will list the movies that had the largest box office numbers. The term box office started with our theater here, the Globe Theater. The Globe is a beautiful theater, as you've already seen. There were two major theaters in England at my time. By the way, my name is William Shakespeare. I am part owner here of the theater. I've also written a few plays in my time, and I'm an actor. Perhaps you've seen me. I was the ghost in Hamlet. It was wonderful. Anyway, the theater which I'm part owner of, the Globe, was one of two major theaters in London, the other being the Rose. And the Rose looks very much like the Globe. We tried to make round theaters. You may pass that around for everyone to see. We tried to make theaters round, but unfortunately in the 1600s it was very difficult to make round buildings. So we made them with many sides. As you can see, the Globe Theater has 20 sides altogether. 3,000 people can sit here. There are 3 tiers for people to watch the shows, but the best seats, the most expensive seats, are right in the front on the stage. We do allow our wealthy patrons to sit on the stage. The stage has on top of it a canopy, a piece of material, which has stars and the sun and the moon on it. It signifies the heavens. But it's the only covering there is. We are open air, so if it rains or snows, unfortunately, you will experience the elements. We have performances here at the Globe every day. In fact, my 2 assistants are preparing for this afternoon's performance. We have a performance every day except Sunday. Our shows start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and will run 3 to 4 hours. Now, if any of you should have to go to the bathroom while you're here, I'm sorry. We have no bathrooms here at the Globe Theater. Sometimes that can be very uncomfortable for some of our theater viewers. In our plays, we use very, very few props in Elizabethan times. For the most part, we use very little scenery. There's usually not elaborate set decorations behind us. What we do is we have our actors, and they will explain what they're holding or the scene that they are in. In fact, to give you an idea of what some of our costumes look like, at one of my very first plays, Titus Andronicus, which is one of the very first tragedies I had written, a gentleman in the audience had sketched some of the costumes as to how they appeared. And you can pass that around as well. The costumes were very simple, and often we got our costumes by accepting donations from our patrons and the aristocracy. We took their own clothes and used them in our plays. If any of you young ladies are looking to become actresses, unfortunately, there are no women actresses in Elizabethan theater. All of the women's roles are played by young men, ages 13 to 19. Is anyone here 13 years old? Oh, no, then you'll have to come back and see me once you turn 13. We have lots of female roles that you might want to try out and play. Also, our actors, you see, we did many plays. In your time, it's possible for a play to run for years in your Broadway, but here at Elizabethan times, in a 6-month period, we might run as many as 18 different plays. An actor might have to learn 800 lines of speech every day to keep up. That would be a lead actor. When you're given a script, let's say the 3 of you were in a play, and you were all in the same scene. When I gave you your script, it would only contain your own lines. You would not know when the other 2 speak or what they say. And you wouldn't know what they say. You would only have your own lines, which is why, in our theater, usually only one person does most of the speaking, and there's never any more than 3 people speaking in a particular scene. Also, actors often had to learn 2 or 3 plays at a time. We didn't have rehearsals where everybody gathered. In fact, the only rehearsals we would have might be a few actors getting together and just going over the lines so they would know what the other person was saying. But there were no formal rehearsals. The reasons that we are here in the theater is because of our benefactors, our patrons. Without them, we couldn't exist. My fellow actors and I are members of the Kingsman Company. Our patron is James I, the King of England. Now, before James I, our benefactor and the person who helped us build the Globe Theatre was Henry Carey. Henry was the Lord Chamberlain, and for over 10 years we were called, you may pass that around, the Lord Chamberlain's men. It's due to the patrons that we have the money to get our costumes and our props and to build our theatre. Now, the original Globe Theatre unfortunately burned down. It was a terrible accident. You should have been there. In 1613, at the performance of Henry VIII, my last play, a cannon misfired, and the entire theatre burned to the ground. All 3,000 people escaped. No one was hurt. The theatre was rebuilt. It lasted about 50 years before it too was destroyed. However, if you should go to London in the 1990s, you will find that they have built a replica of the Globe Theatre on the exact site they believe it stood. And you can attend plays just as they were produced in the 1600s. Now, in case you were wondering about snacks and something you might be able to nibble on while watching a 3-hour play, assistants, if you would be so kind as to start distributing the snacks. I know, of course, you'd love to go to the theater and get buttered popcorn, Whoppers.
No, it's mine. It's mine.
They always do that. Ladies, if you would just pass out the snacks for me, please. You know how they are. They're so temperamental. Anyway, if you went to the movies today, you might eat Whoppers or buttered popcorn. However, in Elizabethan days, to drink, you would have beer or water. As a snack, you would have apples, oranges, hazelnuts. Perhaps you might have gingerbread. What we have prepared for you today is a hazelnut spread on bread. We hope you will enjoy it. It's something that Elizabethans would have loved. In fact, to Elizabethans, hazelnuts were like your raisinets. They were their favorite treats. While you have begun to taste some of our snacks, let me tell you a little bit about my life, since this is the boring part. Actually, my life was totally uneventful. I was born in 1564. My father was a glove maker. I was married when I was 18 years old to a woman named Anne Hathaway. I had 3 children, a daughter and twins. I left my family when I was in my late 20s and moved to London, where I became a part of the theatre. First as an actor, doing little bit parts, and then as a playwright. During the course of my playwriting, what I am known for is writing 2 long narrative poems, poems that tell a story. I wrote 154 sonnets, which are short poems that follow a storyline. And I wrote 38 plays, perhaps more. At least one of those plays has not survived to modern times. I didn't receive a great deal of notoriety or fame during my lifetime. I was an investor in the theater, a part owner of the Globe. Didn't make much money as a playwright, since writers of plays did not own their own writings. The company, the theater company, did. That's why I owned part of the theater company. That's where the money was. 7 years after I died in 1616, the first folio was published. A couple of my fellow actors got together and produced a book. A folio is a large book, and it contained a large number of my plays. From that time to the present, to the 1990s, several folios had been produced, some including plays that I wrote, some not. Some plays that I didn't write that they say I did. But generally it is agreed that 37 plays that we have in existence are mine. One play that we know of that I did write has not survived. But the question is, why are my writings so important? I wrote 3 types of plays. And when you came to the theater, as you entered outside, you would have seen a flag flying overhead. The flag would tell you which of the 3 types of plays were playing today. I wrote tragedies. Tragedies were sad. People died in tragedies. The hero almost always dies at the end. A tragedy is about one person. It's about that hero's faults. The hero has a problem or a decision or something that has to be done. And anything that the hero does affects everything in the play. In a comedy, which is the second type of play I would write, no one dies. There's always a happy ending. Comedies are usually not about one person, but about groups of people, perhaps pairs of people, or three people at a time, and their relationships with each other. In a tragedy, when someone does something, there's always a price to pay if it was a bad thing. In a comedy, everyone gets a second chance. They can do something bad and they get another chance to make up for it. The third type of play I wrote was a history. But do not be mistaken, it's not like the history you learn in schools. A history for me was that I took a historical figure, a king perhaps, and then I would tell whatever story I wanted to about him. It might not be true. It might not have anything to do with what really happened. I would just make up whatever I felt should be told about that person. But the person was a real person. So when you come to the theater, if you see a black flag on top of the globe, it would be playing a tragedy. If you saw a white flag, we would be playing a comedy. And if you saw a red flag, we would be playing a history. But what I wrote was not as important as the people I wrote about. The reason that the Shakespearean plays are the best are because the plays are not about elaborate plots, not about who does what, when, and where. My plays are about people, about what they think and how they feel, the choices they have to make, the decisions they have to make. My plays can be transformed into anything. Romeo and Juliet became West Side Story. The movie Forbidden Planet, a science fiction movie in the 1950s, was actually a Shakespearean play, rewritten to take place on a distant planet. The other night, as someone pointed out, Martin incorporated the Romeo and Juliet story into his show. My plays can be translated into any language because they're not about things that only pertain to Elizabethans. They're about people who make decisions. I created 1,280 characters, not including extras. I wrote 29,000 different words in my plays. How many people here have heard of the Bible? The Bible's very thick, isn't it? Yeah. They only use 6,000 different words. I used 29,000. And one out of every 12 words in every one of my plays is a word I never used again, ever, in any play, in any sonnet, in any poem. How many people here love spelling? You love spelling? Wow, this is truly a diseased class. But I will give you a spelling word to remember. Perhaps you are curious as to what the biggest word I ever used was. I even have to look. There's a spelling word to remember for next week. It was in the play Love's Labor Lost, and it means someone who is honorable. It's derived from a Latin word.
We'll have to remember that when we
But
Scrabble.
as Hamlet would say, one of my characters, the plays, the thing, all these facts and figures mean nothing because Shakespeare is about the characters. Who here has seen a movie where there was an absolutely rotten villain? Someone you absolutely hated, and because you hated him, you loved him. Tell me about your villain.
I don't love him as long as still skills on him. It's scary movie.
Why did you like the villain? Or why was the villain interesting?
Because he was funny looking.
Because he was funny looking. Who can tell me about a real evil villain that was fun to watch? Who?
Chucky.